Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for joining. We really appreciate having you here and your time. And while we wait for like about 5 minutes, if you guys want to tell us where you're calling from. So I am in New Jersey. Our firm is based out of Philadelphia. So we'd love to know where else you guys are coming from. We got a DMV person. Nice. My sister lives down in the DC area. We also have a satellite office there. Wisconsin. I'm from Michigan, so Wisconsin's like neighbors. So, hopefully it hasn't been a really rough winter for you. You've got Florida. You guys have better weather than we do. Although it's getting kind of nice by us too. We've been getting a lot of rain the past few days though. That's good. Winter wasn't too bad. It hasn't been too bad for us either. It's been mild. We got like I think one day of really bad snowstorm and then schools were closed. Everyone was like panicking and then it got better. Just gonna give a few more minutes.
Yes, and thank you for everyone who is completing our poll as you're coming in as well. If you haven't, please make sure you complete that as well.
Yeah, we see the numbers coming in, and we've got a mixed amount of responses in terms of if you know what makes your investments halal versus, have you started your halal investment journey? And I'll share a little bit of my journey as well along the way in, how it was where I started, where we are right now, and how we're continuing to improve. Is everyone excited for Ramadan? We only have a few days left now. you know, Alhamdulillah, it's I feel like, it goes too fast and it doesn't come around fast enough. So really looking forward to it, coming up this weekend, inshallah, and inshallah, it's gonna be great. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. So we are here at Zenith Wealth Partners, and this is our Halal Investments webinar. So before we go ahead and get started, we'd like to tell you guys a little bit about Zenith, how the firm was created, and then we'll take it from there. So Chelsea, I'll go ahead and let you speak a little bit about Zenith, and I'll add in my inputs as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Fahmin. And thank you everyone for joining us this evening. I have to be honest, I'm super excited for this presentation. Maybe because I know a little bit about what's coming, but also it's exciting to see how passionate Fahmin is about this topic. Our firm, Zenith Wealth Partners, is an independent, fee-only financial planning and investment advisory firm. We're on a mission to help people make smart and impactful financial decisions while they're building wealth on their journey. And that consists of helping women and people of color, businesses, and the institutions that support the community that we support as well. We work with helping our clients with retirement planning, estate planning, tax planning, investments, you name it. And what we really pride ourselves on is being a fiduciary. So we don't sell any products and we don't accept commissions. We really just help people and provide advice. Fahmin, I'll pass it back over to you.
Thanks, Chelsea. And, thanks for the background because, Zenith's mission is what kind of drew me to Zenith itself. Because prior to being at Zenith, I was at PNC Bank for about 12 years. And, I spent a decade of that in wealth management, in the trust and estate space. And I saw a lot of wealth disparity because the minimum you needed was $1 million. So everywhere I looked, it was like you needed $1 million, 500,000, 250,000. And it was just like, why is this information being gate kept? Why isn't this, being able to make good and smart, impactful decisions? Why isn't that available to everyone? And I was getting really frustrated as I was looking around because every firm was like that. It was really refreshing when I found my way to Zenith. And, it was created really more for first generation wealth accumulators who want to make good and impactful decisions about their finances and know that they're getting good advice from professionals. So all the financial planners we have on the team are certified financial planners, meaning knowing that, we are not selling you anything. Your interest is our best interest, and that's what we want to ensure. We're not looking to sell you anything. We don't get any commissions. It's just our good quality advice. Okay, so investing for your future. Anyone, why do you think investing is important? Feel free to drop some, comments in the chat as well. Do we have any thoughts about it? Do we feel good about it, bad about it? Do we not know enough? Come on, guys, crickets. Well, I'll go into. Yes, that is exactly true. We need to be investing to ensure we have growth. And then we also want to make sure that our money is working for us. Leaving and planning for your legacy is really important as well. So let's actually talk about why it's the top 5 reasons why you should be investing. One thing is combating inflation, right? Because, we have realized in the past year or so how difficult it has been. Like, we're stretching our dollars and inflation has been off the roof. So if you are just sitting in cash and then, it's, under your mattress or just sitting in a bank account, in your checking account, it is not obviously, you're losing money against inflation because what you $10 could buy 3 years ago is not the same thing what $10 can buy today. So, one thing is you do want to combat inflation. And I know as Muslims, we have the additional stress of worrying about, okay, well, how do I grow, but also ensure that I am not losing, I'm not earning interest and I'm avoiding riba. So we'll get to a little bit more about that as well. And then, reaching your financial goals, whether it's saving for a down payment, whether it's, buying a car, or investing for your children's education, there's different goals and different time horizons we look at. Of course, saving for retirement, we all know that we cannot take out a loan for this. We have to make sure that we are in a good space where we're going to be comfortable when it comes to retirement. And then, of course, taking advantage of tax advantaged accounts. Many of us have employers where we have tax deferred growth, what means you don't pay taxes on it now, but you pay taxes later when you withdraw. There's Roth availability where you pay taxes now, but then you don't pay when you withdraw. But all of that growth in that account in that time is tax-free. So that's a huge component, and we really want to ensure we're taking advantage of that as much as we can. And then, of course, building your legacy. And many of us don't come from families where we have generational wealth, where myself included. I'm a first generation immigrant here. I came here when I was 8 years old. So, I saw my parents struggle, and then we worked. And now, I want to make sure I have something sound to leave for my children. But how do I make sure that's okay? And I won't be able to do that if I have all of that money sitting in cash. Like that 20,000 that I have this year, 20 years later, it's still going to be 20,000. So I know we like to see in pictures, because sometimes that helps us visualize as well. So for example, if we take a look at just like these two people, so we look at Fatima and we take a look at Ali. So Fatima is 25. She contributes 10,000 a year for 40 years. So she's the red line here. And then Ali is 40. He's like, I've got my student loans, I've got my home, I've got my car. I want to make sure I pay everything off before I start investing. I'll invest when I'm ready. So he got ready at 40, but look, he was putting in twice as much as Fatima for 25 years. And then what happened is at the end, Fatima ended up having $2.2 million and Ali had 1.1. And this is not to necessarily discourage anyone who is a little bit older. Whenever is that right time for you, the right time is kind of now. It doesn't necessarily, you don't necessarily have to do 20,000 or 10,000, whatever you can. You just want to get started because you want to take advantage of compounding. And when we're talking about compounding, we're not talking about interest compounding. We're talking about your balances, the growth in the account. That's compounding year over year. So, if you have $1,000 and it grows 100, next year it's 1,100 and that grows to 1,200, and that's always going to be compounding. And that's what we want to focus on. Okay. So you might be wondering, what are, now it's great. We know that we should be investing, but what are some of our investing options? And one of the, so I'll share two that are very popular amongst Muslims who are looking more actively to invest. And I'll talk a little bit more about them as well. They're a little bit more, especially amongst like the younger generation as well. Okay, before we get into this, do we have any questions?
Yes, we do, Fahmin. So the first question is, are we able to share this deck as well after this presentation?
We'll share the presentation afterwards, so we'll send out a recording. So you'll have the deck there.
Perfect. And then our next question is, do you have any recommendations for the most effective ways to play catch up for those of us who got started a little later?
Great question. So one of the ways to actually play catch up is if you're above 50, the IRS does allow you to actually set aside more monies overall. So, for example, if you are, let's say the retirement contribution is 7,000 for 2024. If you're above 50, you can do an additional amount. So that is one thing. Above 50, you have a catch-up amount. But the other thing is also, I think the better option is for you to look at your goals, where you want to be, so you can determine what that catch-up amount has to be. Because if you just arbitrarily just, I'm just going to do another extra 1,000 or another extra 100, it might or might not be enough, or you might need to reassess your goals for how you want your future to look like. So one of the options you guys might have heard of is Wahid Investments. So they are actually the creators of two ETFs that might be a little bit more known amongst you guys, which is the HLAL, which is Halal, and then UMMA. So the Halal is basically, the way they market it is the S&P 500 without the haram. So, and the is more of like an international ETF, but these are both exchange traded funds. So what ETFs, exchange traded funds, are basically, they're a bunch of stocks looped together, like pulled together, and then it's like a fund is created. So you're not necessarily just investing in like a Microsoft or a Google, but it's a whole blend of it, all of them pulled together with certain percentages in each. And the way Wahid works is basically you take kind of like a risk score, like a survey, and then they just invest it for you. You don't necessarily have someone you'll be actually speaking with Wahid. And their minimum to get started, if anyone's interested, is about $100, and they charge 79 bips. So for example, that is if you have a $10,000 portfolio, they're charging you $79 a year. Then we have Amana, which might be also known. Many of your employer options might be offering Amana mutual funds. I've heard that more recently with my Muslim clients, where they don't necessarily have a lot of good options to choose from when it comes to their employer plans, but they do have Amana funds to choose from. So whenever I hear Amana is available, I'm always like, please go for it, because this is going to be the most halal option from what you have. Because clients that don't have it, then what we have to do is we have to take a look at what options are available. We have to see which is like the most halal. And then, we have to kind of create like an allocation and see how we can make sure you're not sacrificing so much return, but then also making sure it's aligned with our halal values as well. And Amana, if you want to get started, you basically have these four to choose from. Whether it's any one of these mutual funds, they'll just, throw you in there, and then they charge a fee on that. So it's depending on which mutual fund you go into. So if you do about 10,000, you can pay about $131 a year for any one of these portfolios if you want to go into. Okay, before we get into our process, do we have any other questions?
Yes, we do. So we have some questions in regard to how Zenith approaches a halal investing strategy. So you're going to get to that. So I'll touch on it after. Another question is, how broad is the definition of halal by many of these halal investment companies? For example, I currently use Amano, which has a lot of tech holdings, but Apple isn't exactly known for ethical work environments. At the same time, it seems like this may be one of the best options we have. Do you see a future where halal funds become more socially responsible?
Wow, that is a fantastic question. And inshallah, we hope for a world where we're going to be able to have a lot more variety than just Wahid and Amana, right? So there is a wealth management firm called Azad, but they have about 500,000. That's their minimum. But then they have some mutual funds that they have created as well. But the thing is, like, as Muslims, we know that different scholars differ, right? Different scholars say different things when it comes to what is your requirement. So sometimes people might think, and I'm referring back to like our poll question is like, do you know what makes your investments halal? So some of us might think that, oh, in order for it to be halal, 100% has to be. But most scholars actually do agree about 70% of the investment has to be halal. So it doesn't have to be like 100% is consistently in alignment, because we all live in the States, so we understand how prevalent interest and riba is, right? Anywhere you go, you can't almost avoid interest. So the businesses that do business in the country also have that. They're relying on that. So when we look at halal investments, or the companies and the securities, we are looking for, in what business are they investing in. So for example, there are certain businesses like we completely avoid, right? Like for example, banks, because we know they're mostly getting their monies from interest-based means. So we're definitely not going to be investing in those. But then we also have additional screenings where we're looking at what is how much of their income is coming from interest-based investments, and how much are they paying in interest. So both of those should be less than or equal to 30%. And I'll get into that a little bit more as well. And as questions come through, please feel free to stop me, Chelsea, and then I'll answer them along the way.
Absolutely. I'll let you touch on a little bit more about our strategies as well. And then afterwards, I'll bring up some more of the questions.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so at Zenith, the way we look at investments in general, right? So, this is a two-faceted approach, because we have to take it a little bit an extra step further for the halal process. So in general, at Zenith, what we do is, we'll have a conversation with our client. And we really want to focus is like, what is your risk tolerance? Because that is a huge component of what is your time horizon? Like, when do you need the money? What capacity do you have to take the risk? Like, if you're making $1,000 and you're trying to invest like 900 of it, like trying to invest above your capacity. And then are you the person who's like, dang, I invested this $900 now what, I can't pay my bills. Now you're losing sleep over it. Then you probably have that, you have a little bit of a lower tolerance than you thought you had. So that's one thing we really take it. We really pay attention to the tolerance. And then after that, we'll create a proposal and a recommendation. But then when it comes to our halal process, what we do is, okay, we know these ETFs are out there. We know these mutual funds are out there, but what are they lacking? What are we going to be doing different? And one thing that we realized is most of these ETFs, what they're using are large cap companies. And what I mean by large cap is these companies have a market cap, like their what their worth is more than $100 billion. So we're looking at like, okay, these are all large cap. What can we do differently? So then we started looking at mid cap, where they're about 2 to 10. Oh, I'm sorry, I said 100 billion. I meant 10 billion. So we're looking at $2 to $10 billion companies where they're doing well and they have potential to become large cap, but we want to catch them while they're still growing. But then we also want to make sure they're within the sector. So we are going through a rigorous screening process, and then we're making sure, hey, is it compliant? So now all of that's there, but is it compliant? And then if it is, then it makes it into our custom portfolio, and then we monitor it every 3 months, because that is the biggest challenge that we as Muslims face. And then when I started investing myself, I didn't know about Wahid and Amana. And Wahid, I believe they started the ETF maybe back in 2022. So I was just like, oh, individually picking stocks. And individually picking stocks is not necessarily where you want to be, because you're putting more concentration of your money, of your portfolio in these individual funds. And you don't necessarily want to have like 100 in your individually picked stocks or securities in your own portfolio. You're better off using an ETF. But then that ongoing monitoring is what makes our selection process more different, because, whether you're with Wahid or Amana, you're not getting to speak to anyone. Here, me, myself, I am going and checking and making sure it's compliant. And I know what I'm looking for, because I know that what makes it halal, what doesn't make it halal. But the other thing is, I really want to acknowledge, and I'm not a scholar, so there's nothing coming through that's like, oh, Fahmin said it's okay, so it must be halal. Like, who is Fahmin? Like, I don't want to, come out as like, oh, I'm a scholar by any chance. So I'll go ahead and speak a little bit more about what do we use to make sure it's staying halal. And then, so this, I touched on this a little bit, is, what's really important when it comes to investment is managing your risk. Like, how much risk do you want? How much risk do you have? And how much should you have? Sometimes people are in much riskier portfolios than where they need to be. And then sometimes people are like, I want to have like 10% return, but I have a risk tolerance of like 20, and I just want my money to all be safe. So basically, when we look at risk tolerance, we look at it from 0 to, or like 1 to 100. 1 is like, I want it all in cash. 100 is like, please give me all of like crypto, and I'm okay with losing all of it. And, I'm comfortable with that. So most people fall somewhere between those lines, obviously. Okay, before I go on to the next one, did we have anything else come through, Chelsea?
Yes, we do, but I want you to get to the one more slide.
Okay, awesome. So here is Zoya. I hope, you guys do know about it. Zoya is a great tool. So basically, I had the opportunity to connect with one of the co-founders of Zoya, and, mashallah, he's an amazing guy. He also lives in Jersey, and he started this app because he was also struggling with what I was struggling with, what many of us have struggled with, is understanding, what makes it halal and how do you do that screening. Most people are obviously not investors or professionals. So it's like, how do I know that's okay? How do I know if that's compliant? So Zoya is an app where they basically, you can put in like the Apple ticker. It'll tell you whether it's compliant or if it's not. And then if you have like the subscription, then they'll give you the breakdown on what percentage of it is compliant, what is not, what is questionable. So we use Zoya for our screening. But then another like example is like it's not like end all be all, because I take it a step further when we look at it. And I'll go ahead and look at our individuals that we created in like that mid-cap exposure that I had mentioned, where I'll go in and individually look at it and see like, okay, if it's not compliant, what is making it not compliant? What is making it not questionable? And one of the examples I'd like to share with you guys is one stock we use is Amphastar Pharmaceuticals. So they are obviously in the pharmaceutical business, so they're over 99% compliant. So check, we've got above the 70% compliant. But then, how much of their revenue is coming from interest bearing, right? How much interest are they receiving? And then how much interest are they paying, like in terms of their debt? So they actually came on as non-compliant. I actually just checked it like a week ago. And I was like, okay, what's going on? And then what happened is their debt is now at 30.53, where they should be at 30.00, which Zoya flagged them as non-compliant. And I was like, this everything else is fine. And this literally their stock price went down just a little bit. There's volatility. So we put it on the watch list. So now we'll watch it for another quarter. And now if it still keeps on going down and the interest, the percentage keeps on increasing, then we'll drop it from the portfolio and replace it with something else. And that's what when it comes to doing your due diligence. And that's what a lot of us don't necessarily have the time for, because you're in different professions, or you don't also have like the knowledge behind what you should be looking for as well, if you're not interested in this. Some people are like, this is great. Some people are like, I'm not interested, this is making me go to sleep. So
Yeah. Well, Fahmin, we do have another question, and it's specifically about how we think about halal investing at Zenith. So can you tell us a little bit about what vehicles, like can we set up an IRA that's strictly halal and managed by Zenith in a halal strategy where we're providing monthly recurring contributions, or is there an app where we can see how our investments are doing, who is our custodian, all of those?
yeah, that's a fantastic question. So initially what we had mentioned is Zenith, we're a fee only firm, right? So we are not selling you anything, we're just paying you, whatever you're paying us is for the financial advice we give you. But we also have another arm where it's investment management. So the way our firm works is not in conjunction, so you don't necessarily have to have investments or financial planning or both. Like you can choose, you can, if you just say, I just want the halal investment portion, I just want you to invest my IRA for me, we can just do that. And that our fee is 1%. So if you have a $10,000 portfolio, that's it's going to be $100 a year. We take that fee out quarterly, which is about $25 a quarter. So that's our process. But if it's a retirement account like an IRA or a Roth, we definitely invest those. And then also regular brokerage accounts, we manage those as well.
Great, thanks, Fahmin. And then we'll, if you do invest in the halal investment strategy with Zenith, can you see what companies your money is invested in?
Yes, absolutely. Yes, thanks. So you will see a breakdown of it. So, we do use some of Wahed, we do use some of Amana, we use Islamic Sukuk bonds as well to offset the fixed income, because some people, have a lower risk tolerance, right? They're like, I want a 50-50 portfolio. I want 50% in equities, but I also want 50% of it to be halal, but I also don't want interest. So what do we do? How do we get that? And one of the ways we have to do that is kind of go international, more in the Middle East, where they do what's called sukuk bonds, which are Islamic bonds, where they're paying you a profit share and it's not a fixed rate.
Perfect. And then another question that just came in, and feel free to come off mute if I get this a little bit wrong, but would I get a bonus if I roll over my brokerage account from M1 Finance over to Zenith's investment halal portfolio?
Bonus from Zenith, or
I'm not fully sure. Welcome if you
so
write it in the chat.
Oh,
Anything more
can
specific?
you guys hear me now that I'm off mute? I'm sorry about
Yes.
the background noise.
yes, can hear you for sure.
What I mean
You're back on mute.
what I mean by that question is I saw an ad on M1 Finance saying, "Hey, roll over your brokerage account, like for instance from Robinhood, and we'll give you like an extra $200 if you roll over this."
Oh, got you. So unfortunately, the answer is no. So we are like, for example, Robinhood, M1, those are like self-managed, right? Like, so basically you will be stock picking yourself. We are, as a firm, where we manage for our clients, there's not necessarily a bonus, but maybe you'll make an additional $250 over, the next few months that will account for the additional growth in your portfolio.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Of course, thanks for your question.
We have one more for me before we keep going, which
Okay.
is interesting. Do we partner with other financial advisors for halal investing strategies?
Not financial advisors, but we do partner with we partner that we use Zoya. We don't necessarily partner with them, so we're actually one of their clients. So we use we're actually one of Zoya's, like we subscribe to them, so we get the additional listing in terms of like the breakdown of how the compliance level is working. But we don't work with other financial advisors because we know what we're trying to create. So we're curating a portfolio for our clients, and we're using Zoya as an added measure to make sure whether it's compliant or not. Because like I said, I'm not a scholar. So what Zoya uses is they use the AOFI standard, which is based out of Bahrain, where they have a school of scholars who are determining if certain securities are compliant or are not. So that's their component. They're the ones that decide. So they're kind of taking the guesswork out of us, basically the way they're advertising. But we don't necessarily partner with anyone else because we know that what we're creating is good quality and diversified portfolios for our clients, and we're just using Zoya as an added measure to make sure it does stay compliant.
And Fahmin, we have a hand raised, so I think somebody would like to follow up.
Yes, please. Please feel free to come off mute as well, or drop it in the chat. Do we know who was raising their hand?
It was me, but I think you answered the question, unless maybe if I want more clarity on that. So, what I wanted, what my question was, let's say I'm also in the financial industry. So let's say most of my clients are Muslims, and some of them just want like halal investment and stuff like that. That was my question. Like, do you guys work with other people maybe to manage assets of like those people? Let's say I have a client who don't want like have an investment in the market in general. All they want is just, halal investment, something that is stuff like that. I'm like, okay, I cannot do that right now because I'm not just doing like halal investment, but maybe can I kind of how to call it make a referral to like I know this company like they do halal investment and stuff like that. Was my question.
Great question. And yes, absolutely. So if you have clients who are looking for halal investments, please feel free to, send them my contact information, which we'll share later on after the webinar as well. But then, feel free to refer to them to Zenith, because we don't have the minimum, but then we also have the halal investment. So if they're not looking to do it themselves, like if they don't feel comfortable with just like, oh, I'm going to buy an ETF and call it a day, they want more of a managed approach and work with a professional, yes, please feel free to send them our way, and we're happy to have a conversation with them and then see if we're a good fit.
So if I understand it, basically your firm is what you focus on is assets under management, right?
So we have
Or am
two
I be wrong?
arms.
Okay.
So you're right. But then there's the other component, right? So we have financial planning And then we have investment management. So some people can just come in and say, like, for example, let's say you have a client that says, I just want to do halal investment. I don't want anything to do with financial planning. Then we can just do halal. We can just do investments, and we can ensure that their investments are halal. But then if they are like, I just want financial planning, I don't want any investments, then they can certainly do just the planning portion, and they don't have to do investments. So, and they can do both, they can do either, but it's not like you have to do both in order to have our services.
Thank you.
Of course.
All right, well, we do have another question for me, and so this one is, any guidance on how to navigate our 401k plans? I've had one for the past 7 years for my company, but I don't know how to maximize it since I fear I would make haram selections. I've selected real estate, but that's it.
Great question. So, that is something that I actually hear a lot from, many clients that want to work with me as well. It's like, okay, it's great that we can do the investment side, but what do we do when it comes to our employers? We don't have a lot of options because we only have what they give us, right? So basically is, we have to say, like, what is like the least haram you have? So we have to take a look at all of the options that are available to you, and then see what percentage of it is halal. So for example, I worked with a client where we needed to get to 70, but he was like at 61%. And there was no other way where we were going to be able to curate his investment along with his risk tolerance and have it meet that 70%. So it's like, okay, 61% of it is halal, but then annually what you will have to do is, take that additional 9% out and then donate it. And, that's how you purify your income. And unfortunately, because of the type of country we're in, where its interest is industry led, we have to do extra work. Like, having halal investments is not easy. It's not like you can just set it and forget it, unless you just do like one of the ETFs. But then if you're trying to be a little bit more intentional and you want to make sure you have a well diversified portfolio, then you have to kind of do the additional homework. But that's why we're also here. Some people are like, I don't know how to do this homework. Can I just partner with you like on an annual basis to make sure I'm compliant? And I have a client that is going to be doing that annually with me. I'm going to be checking his employer options every year, and then telling him what percentage was good, what percentage was not, and then I just tell him the amount he's happy. Do we have any other questions?
We have a few more, but I was gonna say, let's get through the next few slides, and then I think they may address them as well.
Okay, awesome. So one component is, diversification. So that's one thing that we're really huge on. And as an industry-wide generalization, right? You don't necessarily want to have all your eggs in one basket, right? Let's say, you do really, really like Apple. I've got a client who really likes Apple. And he's like, I'm in it for the long run, but then we also want to make sure how much of your portfolio is in Apple. Yes, they're doing really well, but what if one day something happens? Then can you afford to take that loss, or do you have the time to take that loss? Do you have the time to make up for that difference? So we want to make sure you're diversified. So one thing we are doing additionally is we are looking at what the ETFs that are available, what we can add additionally. So one thing I mentioned is the mid cap, right? Where we're adding that in to add diversification, because everything is mostly in large cap. Another thing is we're adding in halal international exposure to get in like that fixed income. And then also we're not just going international, a lot of it just going straight to Europe, because Europe is also very much interest based as well. So we're looking more in the Asia spectrum where there are more compliancy there. And then also we are diversifying. So somewhat like someone might say, hey, why do I need to work with Zenith? Why don't I just go and buy the Wahid Halal ETF or the Amana mutual fund? Yes, you can do that, but they also have a larger concentration in large cap, right? So what we do is we're taking percentages of those ETFs, of those mutual funds, and then we're marrying them together to create a portfolio that's more diversified. So meaning our goal is to make sure it's compliant. That's our number one goal. So, if you're looking at like, my account that's not halal made, 15%, and your halal portfolio made, 12%. That's not what our focus is. Our focus is our money is halal, our investment is halal. So we're not necessarily looking at performance. Like, for example, same thing, like if you're looking at a halal mortgage and you're like, hey, Chase told me 7 point, and then now, for example, we have two Islamic financing, right? We have Guidance Residential, and then we have UIF. And then UIF is saying 7.25. You're like, the Chase is giving me better, but you're getting a halal mortgage, so it's halal. You're not going there for the rate. So when you're looking at your investments, you want to be looking at, why am I here? Am I investing for performance, or am I investing to make sure my investments are halal? So yes, I mean, inshallah, we're going to be performing higher because we're looking at it more from an ethical approach, and then we're making sure it's in aligned with our values. So one thing is, alhamdulillah, last year has been good. So we're just shy of about 4 months from making a year. So this is actually one of our models, and one of my accounts is actually personally invested in this model as well. So we're looking at the gray right here is the benchmark, which is basically 100% in equities. And then this blue line here is one of our models. And alhamdulillah, we have outperformed like this equity benchmark of 100. And that's something we're really proud of, because we want to ensure that momentum keeps on going as well. And right now we're also in a market where stocks are doing a little bit better, like the tech industry is doing really well. So we want to make sure we capitalize on those. But then, let's say, 6 months later or a year later, it's not looking too hot, then we'll diversify out and, invest in what's a little bit more appropriate at that time. So you continuously have that ongoing management. It's not just sitting in like a robo-advisor type of account.
Okay, Fahmin, you have prompted a lot of questions now. So I'll start. Do we have options for short-term investments? So let's say you have a small lump sum of about $10,000 that you want to invest, but you want to make sure that you can withdraw it in, let's say, 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
I think
What
you were
happened?
thinking something popped up.
Oh,
Okay.
sorry. Okay. Do it for short term. So one thing we look at is like, what can we do that we can get a yield where we're not investing in and taking such a large risk, but then also making sure it's growing. So and by the way, I am not affiliated with UIF whatsoever. I just bring them up because we don't have a lot of good halal options. So UIF actually has a time deposit, which is basically like a CD, where you can park your money and get you can get a profit. So anyway, I think right now they're saying anywhere from like 4 to 5%. It's not fixed, because if it's fixed, it's not halal, right? So this is more of like a profit sharing model where you are able to invest it, like the minimum is 5,000, you set it aside for like a year, and you get that quarterly growth, like a profit rate, like 4.5%, 4%, 5%, whatever it may be, but that's not sitting in cash. The other component is there is like Amana does have like a fixed income type of mutual fund that you can invest in, or if you're open to it, you can also buy gold. Gold buying today, and then you can just buy some jewelry, and then 2-3 years later you can sell it, and that's alhamdulillah has been doing really well as well. So depending on what your preference is, that's something that I've seen a lot of people that want to do. They're like, can I just buy gold, and I know I can just sell it later on, and then if I don't need it, I'll just give it to my heirs afterwards. So it's also kind of thinking about your estate too.
And another question we had is, I'm sure every individual is different, so this may be case specific, but are mutual funds ever enough? Do you tend to recommend a combination of ETFs and mutual funds as the tools to invest, and then a combination of different vehicles like IRAs and 401ks? Any general info on what a good world combination of where we store our money would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, that is, a fantastic question and just in line with what we think about when it comes to financial planning, right? So when we think about financial planning and the way we diversify our clients' accounts, so we want to make sure you have enough set aside for emergencies. And I can't stress the importance of this enough because time and time again, we're having so many clients who, are unfortunately losing their jobs or getting laid off and they don't have enough set aside in emergencies. So you need to have at least 3 to 6 months set aside in emergency. So that's kind of like your cash account, right? But you can do that in like a CD as well. I mean, in a worst case scenario, if you need to break it, you pay a penalty, but at least you don't have to deal with like the volatility of the market. But then when it comes to like mutual funds and ETFs, we personally at Zenith, we also look at like you shouldn't just do one, right? So we use a mix of it. So we create like a basket of it in addition to what we think as well. So we are creating that diversification. And then for the type of accounts you have, right? So there's tax deferred, meaning like, your 401ks where you don't pay taxes on it now, but you will pay taxes on the amount you are withdrawing. So let's say you have $1 million in your 401k when you retire. And then when you're pulling from it and you're retired, now you don't have to pay tax on that $1 million. You're pulling 10,000 out, you're withdrawing, you only pay tax based on your tax bracket then on that 10,000. So that's like your tax deferred. Your tax exempt is where you are, let's say, maybe just starting off right now, or you're going to be making more income later on in the years, inshallah. So you are paying taxes now. And then when you withdraw, it's all tax free. So that's your Roth money. And then there's like, you have your brokerage accounts where you are not tied to any kind of retirement rules, where you can just put money in and you can pull out whenever you need to. There's no penalty associated with it. It's just a matter of growth or loss. So you would either pay capital gains or capital losses, depending on, if you had it for a year or not. So it's short term or long term, but that gets a little bit more technical. But we definitely recommend you should have tax deferred, you should have tax exempt, you should have taxable, you should definitely also have, your emergencies. You should be well diversified across the board. So you have options. You don't want all of your eggs in one basket. That is for sure.
That is great. And if you do want to learn more about what this specifically looks like for your financial picture, we did also drop a link to schedule an intro call with Fahmin or any of the financial planners on our team as well. Fahmin, we do have another question. So this one is about dividend-focused halal funds. Is that something we offer, or a fund for someone whose goal isn't to get maximum return, but to get one's annual salary in the form of stable dividends instead?
So, that's when I would ask you, like, what is your annual salary, right? And then what is the size of that portfolio? Because that is something that we want to be mindful of overall, because if you're just trying to pull dividends and then you're trying to make $10,000 from a dividend portfolio, we have to look at what that size of that portfolio has to be. But then we can definitely curate something where we are like mixing amana, and then we're also mixing like the sukuk bonds, and then we're also maybe bringing in azad funds because they also have like a fixed income. But we can create a pool, but we have to take a look at, like, what is the annual salary you're looking for, what is that dividend you're looking for, and then what is the size of the portfolio. So it's like a whole array of things that we have to look at before we can say we can or we cannot do it. But that's definitely an option. We just have to look for it a little bit further to see if that's something we can replicate.
And Fahmin, can you talk about what financial planning looks like at Zenith and what that entails? If someone was to schedule a meeting with you, for example, what should they expect? And what should they be ready for that during the conversation?
Yeah, that's a great component as well. So when we think about financial planning, right, we look at our clients where they are. We meet our clients where they are, wherever they are. So we're not necessarily looking, you don't have to be like, you don't have to fit like a mold. So for example, some clients are looking to get out of debt, but they're very overwhelmed. So we can just focus on that component. Some people are like, hey, I'm like in my 30s, I have a child, I have a house. I don't know if I'm saving enough. Am I going to be okay? Or, I traveling is really important to me and I want to spend $15,000 on vacation. Can I really afford that and still have a secure retirement? So different people have different questions. So it also depends on what type of clients they are. Some people are like, I think I'm okay. I just don't know what to do. So, if you can just please give me like a roadmap to follow and I'm good, I can implement on my own. So we have something that's like a project-based engagement, which takes about 2 to 3 months for us to go through and we do like basically a financial audit of your finances. We'll take a look at your investments, where you are, how it should be. You want halal investments, we'll incorporate that. And then we'll give you a recommendation. We'll tell you our final recommendations on what you can really afford to do. We might tell you, okay, maybe you can't do 15,000 annually, but you can do 12. So we'll basically create that breakdown for you. We have some clients who are like, I'm really not good at it. I don't really do good with instructions. You can give me a plan, but I won't follow it. I need someone to follow up. So we also offer a financial planning ongoing service where we'll check in with you on a quarterly basis. That's our commitment to you. We'll make sure we're checking in on a quarterly basis. Like, hey, did you go ahead and get this implemented? Hey, let's talk about your taxes. Hey, let's talk about that business you wanted to start. Now, do you have enough set aside? So, it depends on where you are in your financial journey. We'll meet you there. And then some people are like, I just want to know if I can afford to buy this house. This mortgage rep is telling me I can buy 800,000. I think I can do the payment, but should I do the payment? Because now I have like a young child. I might want to have another child, and taxes keep going up because I live in New Jersey. So we'll take a look at all of that and say like, okay, your broker is maybe saying 800, but you can actually do 650. And this is more of your comfort, where you should be in your overall finances. So we look at your overall whole financial picture. We don't just look at retirement in solo. We don't just look at investments in solo. We're looking at your entire financial plan together.
Awesome. Thank you, Fahmin.
Of course. Do we have anything else coming in before I go ahead and go over to the next slide?
You're all set.
Okay, awesome. And then, so we're almost at the end, guys. So basically, what is our takeaway? So if there's one thing you take away from our call today, guys, it's one thing is understanding what is the right amount of risk for you. I cannot stress this enough, where I have had so many, especially older individuals who are like, I started investing and I don't like that guy because he took my money and I lost it all. And that's probably because they did not understand when they needed that money, they also didn't understand what was their risk level. They probably had a risk score of like maybe 25 and then invested in like 75. So please understand what is your level of risk, how you look at what is your comfort. And then also keep investing. Like if you can't do like 500 a month, do $50 a month, do $100 a month, but stay consistent, because that's what's going to get you that growth overall. And you also want to make sure you diversify and rebalance. And rebalance is really important. You should be looking at your accounts at least on an annual basis to see how it's doing. And for our clients, we look at it on a quarterly basis to make sure it's staying compliant. And then if we need to diversify out, if we need to rebalance, meaning change your allocation, now all of a sudden with performance, let's say you're like at 60% in tech, we're like, no, that's too much. We'll rebalance. And then, depending on what your risk tolerance and what type of portfolio is you're in, will diversify. And then also staying long-term oriented. That is so huge. I don't know how many of you do have retirement accounts and kind of just forget about it, right? You don't think about it because it comes out of your paycheck. But then when you look at it over time and you're like, dang, I kind of forgot about that money. It's just there and I don't even miss it. And you see how much that, alhamdulillah, that account has grown. So it's staying long-term oriented is very, very a large portion of how you can have your growth grow. And when we talked about Fatima and Ali, the one thing that really made the difference was the time horizon. Fatima started when she was much younger versus Ali, who started much later, but it was just a matter of time. So the whole thing is stay consistent, know your risk, make sure you're having some professional eyes at least on an annual basis, and then keep on focus on your goals. If you need it in 10 years, it's not doing well right now, don't worry, keep investing. And then inshallah, in 10 years, you'll at least have a average return that's what you wanted. Okay. Do we have any other questions coming in, Chelsea?
We do have one more, which is what are the potential challenges or pitfalls that halal investors should be aware of?
One huge thing is making sure are your investments staying compliant? That is something huge because I do have clients that come on and then they're like, can you please do an analysis on my investments to see if it's halal? And then when I'm looking at it, it's like, hey, 30% of your portfolio is not. They're like, I'm really shocked because when I started 2 years ago, I even used the Zoya app and it was all compliant and it's not anymore. And that's what happens because we think, we can just set it and forget it, but we have to be active and making sure that our portfolios are staying halal. And that is the hardest part about making sure it's staying halal because, if you're like, just investing in like the Vanguard ETF, like VOO, right? You can just invest in that. But, people who are investing in that aren't necessarily worrying about what's halal, what's not. So if you're in a portfolio where that's diversified, you want to make sure it's aligning with your goals. You have to keep checking. So if you don't want to check it yourself, then working with a professional is a really good idea. And some people really get a kick out of this. They're like, I really want to do this. I want to feel like I'm doing a great job with my investments and, I'm making a difference in my own, retirement. And please feel free to do it, but you want to check it at least 3 months to making sure, it's staying compliant because Zoya does update their compliance every 3 months on a quarterly basis as well. Okay. And then some of you might not have like, 401k accounts, which are tax diverse. Some of you might have like a 401a or a 403b. So, they're all, they're just terms for what your employer is using. But what we're really talking about is tax deferred, where you're not paying taxes right now, but you're going to be paying taxes when you withdraw on the amount you withdraw. Okay. And then feel free to take the QR code and then go to our website as well. Do we have anything that has come in?
I think we addressed a lot of them during the presentation. So.
I love the engagement, guys. I know in the beginning we started off a little bit more like, crickets, but then I love the fact that you guys are curious because, that's what really kind of led me to, work with Chelsea and then push everyone at Zenith. Like, we need halal investments because I know the need is out there because, I started struggling with that myself, starting with just individual investments, and everywhere I looked, like I couldn't find anything where, I'm like, I want to do well, alhamdulillah, I'm in a good place, but how do I make sure, it's still ethical? And, I am not doing like literal like investment analyst type of research so we need to streamline this. So to be able to bring this offering to you guys, though, for those of you who are interested, please feel free to have a conversation. And, even if just to reach out to someone to have a conversation with, because Muslim financial planners are extremely hard to come by. Today I actually met in the country 3 other certified financial planners. It's like, and no one lives in Jersey. So actually I'm lying. I met one person like a month ago in Jersey. So that is it's something that I'm happy to be a resource. That's one of the main reasons why I became a certified financial planner, is to work with people who don't necessarily have access to people to work with, to speak with professionals, because they don't have like that minimum. Okay.
Awesome. Well, Fahmin, that was amazing. I definitely learned a lot. I feel like even though we have a lot of these conversations, there's still always a new nugget that I take away. So I appreciate your passion in sharing this. I'm sure a lot of people have a lot to think about now while they're reviewing their own portfolios and their own financial plan as well. So thank you for sharing. If you registered, you'll get the recording as well sent to you so you can watch it again and share it with any other friends that weren't able to join. And then we also shared the link if you'd like to schedule an intro call, talk about your own finances, or learn more about our services as well. So thank you, everyone, and hope you have a great evening.
Thank you, guys. And Ramadan Mubarak to everyone. And inshallah, see you guys and have future conversations with you guys as well.